So I think we're going to get started now. So my name is Emily Mercer. I am the project manager at Advance RI-CTR for the Professional Development Corps. And we are very excited to have Andrew Kramer here. He's an open science librarian over at Brown's Library and also affiliated with our BibC Corps here at CTR. And he is going to be doing a deep dive into the new NIH SciENcv requirements. So he'll be doing this live tutorial. If you run into technical issues, you can reach out to me and we can also go over any technical issues at the end as well. The chat is open for other questions and this session will be being recorded. If anyone has any questions, again, just feel free to put them in the chat, but otherwise we'll be getting started.
Okay, so I think I just wanted to preface again that Advanced Rhode Island ACTR has been wonderful to set up today's webinar, and especially having this as the vehicle for reaching folks in the hospitals as well as on main campus. And so I think that's one of the great benefits of this community is that we have folks at our hospitals who may not know that they can reach out to us for some help and support in these areas. So I'm happy to see some of our colleagues, faculty and administrative staff who are on the call today. And we welcome folks to we might not be able to sort out everyone's SciENcv technical issues on the call, but if for the last couple of weeks, we've been inviting folks for one-on-one consults where we can meet on Zoom, people can share screens, and we can kind of troubleshoot some of the issues that folks are having. And so, if folks want to, reach out, they can email me directly at andrew_creamer@brown.edu or public_access@brown.edu or open@brown.edu or our health and biomedical library services chat service, health sci librarians at brown.edu, and it will come into our chat group. I also want to say that today is a live demo, so we wanted to show you know what folks are experiencing and how to do this, in the hopes that folks that haven't done this yet can kind of follow along. So if you haven't had a chance to set up your SciENcv, that this is what we're here for, and so I also want to preface that we might run into some technical issues. Like I was doing a demo for family medicine 2 weeks ago, and the site was experiencing some bugs, and some of the investigators were saying, why is it saying X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, well, I'm not seeing X, Y, and Z. And of course, then I later saw X, Y, and Z, and happened to be like a site-wide, system-wide bug. So, if that happens, then, that's par for the course for doing a live demo. Um, and I also wanted to say that, some of the folks that have been involved with the National Science Foundation, uh, who have been submitting awards there, they switched to using SciENcv and these common forms for biosketches and common support more than a year ago. And at that time, there was sort of a larger curve because folks hadn't, those communities don't use MyNCBI, the platform. And so I thought, okay, well, SciENcv is a part of the MyNCBI platform. This is where our investigators who are NIH funded already go for accessing their My Bibliography and linking papers with their grants, saving their PubMed collections and searches and whatnot. And so adding SciENcv to this platform, we're already kind of familiar with the site, and so there's sort of an advantage there, I think. And at the same time, because of the volume of users, when the NSF switched to using SciENcv and these biosketches, we didn't have as near as many sort of technical issues on the platform side, where it's just, the volume of folks who have been updating their biosketches and current and pending support documents for recent grant deadlines has put a lot of pressure on the system. And so the help desk, in some cases are telling folks, oh, we need this much leeway for help, or they've been telling people to like use the site during, off hours and whatnot. And so I understand that there's been a lot of frustration. There's also just been, there's a lot of cookies generally with this site, from tracking websites. And so I think that it's testing a lot of our patience. And so I understand that some folks probably have tried many things more than one time, just to keep telling folks, clear your cache, clear your cookies, refresh your browser, use the private or incognito window or another browser. If you're using Chrome, use Safari to get through some of these bugs. But I empathize because I've been experiencing them as well. Okay, so to get started, we just want to make sure that everyone uh, is sort of following along with us. And what's interesting in this demo is I've been telling people that uh, and to get started, we're actually not going to start in SciENcv. We're going to start in ERA Commons. And the reason is because NIH, in addition to having your biosketch and your current and pending support document in SciENcv and having your ORCiD linked to your SciENcv account and present on your biosketch, biographical sketch common form, and CPOS documents, is that we also need to make sure that your ORCiD identifier is linked in your ERA Commons. And some folks have submitted documents, and there might be a warning message that says, the ORCiD associated with this SciENcv or biosketch doesn't match the ORCiD within ERA Commons. And in some cases, we found investigators might be missing having added their ORCiD to their ERA Commons account. So what I would like to do at the beginning of this demo is actually have you log into your ERA Commons account first, and I'll do this here with us. So since we're doing a live demo, so that folks can check to see. Let me see if I remember my password here. If their ORCiD is linked, and if it's not, how to get that on there. Once you log in, to check if your ORCiD is present on your ERA Commons account, on the left side, under Personal Profile, there's a black box. If you click on that black box, we want to check, well, here, some of us are delegates on faculty's accounts, so make sure that you're in your account or whomever. If you're a delegate, a staff member delegate, you select your account, and if you're on an investigator, obviously you would have your account, so make sure you have your account. But that's a good preface because as delegates, staff delegates, we might need to check if faculty that we're helping submit documents that we can check to see if their ORCiD ID is present. And if it's not, then we can contact them to add it. So you'll see here on the upper left side, there's a personal profile box. And underneath here, there's an ORCiD identifier, ORCiD ID. And for folks that see nothing there, it will say create or link. And you click this link, and it will take you to ORCiD, where you can it will have you authenticate and log in. And then it should take you back here. And then your ORCiD ID should be added there. If it doesn't show, for some reason there's a connection, just try it again or clear your cookies or cache. And again, some of these sites are really buggy. Sometimes we've had to do it multiple times to make it stick. But the idea is even before we go into SciENcv, we need to make sure that the ORCiD ID is linked to your ERA Commons profile. And we've had some instances where it ends up that a faculty member might have more than one ORCiD identifier, and the one that they've linked to their SciENcv one here. And so that error message might come back and say they don't match. So it's a good rule just to come back here and make sure that ORCiD identifier matches the one there. So that's our first step. So before we go into even SciENcv, we just want to make sure that ORCiD ID is linked in your ERA Commons account. Now, to dive into SciENcv, as I mentioned, since we're already familiar with the MyNCBI platform, because this is where we access My Bibliography, among other tools, is that we want to remind faculty to continue logging in consistently in the same way. So the way you used to log into MyNCBI to access your My Bibliography, if that was through login.gov, if that was through your ERA Commons ID, what have you, that you continue to use that login pathway because we've had some cases in which it might generate a duplicate account. And so you end up with more than one MyNCBI account. And now having duplicate MyNCBI accounts by itself is not necessarily too big of an issue, but ideally we'd like your ERA linked My Bibliography and your ORCiD ID linked SciENcv to live within the same MyNCBI account because you can add delegates from your department, your, grants and finance staff, so that they can access your documents, or in some cases help prepare documents. And so we've had some cases in which folks have reached out and said, I'm preparing documents for a PI. The PI is logging in saying and they're not seeing those documents. And so the case might be that they're working in two different MyNCBI accounts. So the it's not the worst case scenario because we can contact the help desk and they can merge those accounts for us. And so we've had to do that quite often over the last couple of weeks. And so I'm just going to log in the way that I typically log in, but I just wanted to put that out there for folks to log in consistently in the way that they've done before. Because as I mentioned, you have a lot of options: ORCiD, E-Rate Commons, login.gov. And so so I'm going to log in through Brown for myself. But I'm going to have you, since we're doing this as a live demo, to log in the way that you typically log in. So it'll have me do my two-factor authentication here. And hopefully folks are following along, doing their own.
Andrew, while we're waiting for that to kind of work its way through the authentication steps, we did have a question in the chat about someone who had recently transitioned to a different position in another institution. And although ERA is updated, it's not reflected in their ORCiD, even though both are linked. Would this be something you would recommend contacting the help desk about?
So just to confirm, so the question is their position is not updated in their ORCiD ID information or their ERA Commons information?
It sounded like the first one.
Okay.
It's
So
not updated in ORCiD.
yeah, so in ORCiD, so we have the option, we make available through the library. If you go to researchers at brown.edu and you scroll to the very bottom, or just go to library.brown/ORCiD, where we've asked faculty to claim their ORCiD through the university so that it automatically assigns, Brown as an employer or an affiliate, or for students for education. And you own your ORCiD. So if you go to another institution, you can break that connection. And I'll actually show folks how to break those connections with institutions. That's actually not a bad thing to show. So we'll get to that. But definitely in ERA Commons, we've had some faculty, because we're already meeting to talk about their SciENcv, and then we've noticed some other issues, and so we come in here to their personal page profile, and you can see where it says demographics and employment. And so we've actually had some faculty where we've had to update. We had a faculty member who I think it still said Memorial Hospital, which is Kent Memorial Hospital, and so we've had to like switch some of that, sort of update some of this information. So I think SciENcv has been a really good opportunity for us to kind of go and tidy up a lot of these systems, which I understand is a lot of administrative burden for PIs because, you have information here and then you have information in your My Bibliography and you have information in your SciENcv, and we're sort of meeting to sort of update all of these at various times. But the reason why this would be a good time to click on your demographics and your name and ID and sort of update that information is because when we get to generating a SciENcv, one of your options for pre-populating the identifying information section of a biographical common form is pulling information from ERA Commons. And so if your information is not updated in ERA Commons, then it's going to pull in information that's incorrect or outdated into your biosketch if you choose that pathway. So we'll definitely come back. We'll circle back to some of those here in a moment. So as I mentioned, with these multiple login pathways, um, MyNCBI in general, you've been able in the past, even before SciENcv was a thing, you've been able to link multiple login pathways to your MyNCBI account. And the way we did that was you can click on your name. So if you're in MyNCBI or you're in SciENcv, you click on your name and you come down to account settings. And you'll notice that there's a section called linked accounts. And in linked accounts, you can add ERA Commons ID, you can add login.gov, you can add ORCiD, you can add Brown, all of these pathways. And so we've had faculty, where someone says, we need to link your ORCID ID to your SciENcv account. And they'll say, oh, it's already linked. And what they're meaning is that they've added their ORCID it's already linked here, but it's not still linked in the SciENcv until it's actually been added to the mini profile on the landing page of SciENcv. So even if you see ORCID here, that means you can log in through ORCID to access your MyNCBI or SciENcv account, but it doesn't mean that it's been linked to your SciENcv account, which I know is frustrating because you've already linked it here, and so we wonder like why can't that just carry over? But that's beyond my control. And so if you wanted to log in with your ERA Commons account or your login.gov, just click Add Account and look for ERA Commons or NIH and find that in the drop down box here. I just sped right past that. Here it is, ERA Commons. Click on that, it'll take you to ERA Commons. You log in, you authenticate, and then it should add here. Um, the reason I bring this up now is because some of us have been trying to add ORCIDs in SciENcv, and for some reason, we get error messages back that a token has expired, or we get an XML error message, or it just loops us back and forth. So there have been times in which I've just had to remove ORCID from an account and re-add it. And so the way you would remove it is to come here where it says, you see that trash can, and you click on that trash can. And then when you go into your ORCID profile, let me just log in here to my ORCID. I'm going to log in through Brown. We've also have the ability to break that connection between ORCID and MyNCBI. So if you click on your name, same as MyNCBI, but this time you're going to go to what's called Trusted Parties, and you'll see National Center for Biotechnology Information, which is the official name for MyNCBI, and you'll see this link that says Revoke Access. So you can click that Revoke Access and it'll break that link here. So in some cases, for whatever reason, if it's a site bug or cookies or just the platform bug that day, we've had to break these connections and re-add them. So in this case, um, it's good to know that we can sort of break those connections and remake those connections and hope that folks can sort those things out. I also want to highlight that since we're here doing this live demo and you're doing this along with me, you can add a delegate right now to your SciENcv and MyNCBI account so that we have access to your My Bibliography and SciENcv. So what you do here, again, you click on your name in the upper right-hand corner, you click on account settings, it'll take you to this page. You come down to delegates, click add delegate, and just put in my email address, which is andrew_creamer@brown.edu if you want me to be able to view your My Bibliography or view your CV, and then hit save, and then I'll get an email. If you have grants and finance staff within your department who help support your maintaining your My Bibliography or linking papers with grants in My Bibliography or submitting RPPRs or uh, creating a biosketch or current and pending support document. So you add, whomever you need to add, but folks are welcome to add me if they wish. And that's where you add a delegate here. And since we're talking about delegates, since we're already in our ORCID account, we were talking about how to break connections with MyNCBI in case we have to reconnect them for some reason. But under that trusted parties, there's also individuals. You can also add me or someone else. If for some reason you might need assistance adding publications to My Bibliography or your ORCID, if you add us to SciENcv, we're automatically added to your My Bibliography unless you unclick that box. But with ORCID, you have to do it again since these are separate systems. So ORCID is not a federal system. It's a private organization that partners with NIH. So if you've made us a delegate on your SciENcv account, we don't automatically have access to your account. So for example, and as delegates, if we're on the call, we need to create our own ORCID accounts if we're going to be delegates on faculty's ORCID accounts. And so you can put in my email address and then find me there, and then you can add me, and then you can see here, professors or other faculty at Brown and the hospitals who have added me so that I can access their ORCiD profile for various reasons in case they want me to add papers that might be missing, so that they're accessible through SciENcv to be added to a biographical sketch in the future. So that's just looking at logging in. And so as I mentioned, we're going to start off on the SciENcv landing page. And what's important about the SciENcv landing page is this ORCiD ID. Because as I mentioned, folks might have already linked their ORCiD as a login option at some time in the past. But if it isn't here, if you're logging into your landing page and you don't see ORCiD ID here, that means it hasn't been linked to your SciENcv profile. And we've had a whole range of issues. We've had some folks that might have in the past been at another institution or were trainees someplace and they have more than one MyNCBI account and they might have linked their ORCiD to another account. So they might get an error message that says there's a third party and we have to go and find that other account and do those steps of removing the link between ORCiD and MyNCBI on their ORCiD profile, clear their cookies, log out, or try a different browser and try to re-add again. I do want to highlight that I have a whole tip sheet here of every time we've been encountering technical issues, I come back to this document and I update it. And so we have folks that are stuck in a loop trying to add their ORCiD. We have folks that have duplicate accounts trying to add their ORCiD. We have folks who are getting these expired token or XML error messages. We've had a whole host of problems. NIH, for their part, they have released some of these guidances. So, for example, this is on how to fix a token issue. So I keep adding those to those documents. But a lot of these issues just stem to the fact that this platform is under a lot of stress right now with the volume of users. And if just there's been a lot of bugs, and sometimes I've just had to log out, clear my cookies, go to another browser and try again, which is frustrating. But we keep trying. So
Andrew, would you be
as
able
I
to put the link to that tip sheet in the chat for
Yeah,
the
no problem. No
we
problem at
got a
all.
few
Let me
questions
put that
about
in.
that.
Yeah,
And it sounds like you can also add a delegate who's not part of your institution. So a hospital faculty could add a Brown member. Is that correct?
That's correct. As long as you have my email, you can add, into your MyCBI account. So I have access to hospital folks. Same thing with ORCiD, because ORCiD again is not part of Brown or Brown University Healthcare New England, so it's a private. So you would just come down here to trusted parties and trusted individuals, and just put in my email address, and it would search, you know, hit search, and you could find me. And again, for staff on the call, we just want to make sure that for us to be delegates, we have to make sure we have our own MyNCBI and SciENcv accounts. We have to have our own free ORCiD accounts. So these are free to set up. That way we can give out those emails to the faculty that we support so that they can add us on there.
And it seems like a
Okay.
few people have mentioned that they'll get an error that said, um, this email can't be added. Try again later. Is that where clearing cookies might help?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the help desk for their part has been responsive, but some of the feedback, I've submitted one error and they've come back and said like, oh, would you try using the site at a time in which there's less traffic? But who wants to set an alarm to wake up at 4 a.m. to do some of these these steps? And so it's one of those things where it's like, if it's not working, try to clear your cache and cookies, and then sometimes we might just have to step away and then come back or try a different browser to get through some of these error messages. But yeah, I think that's definitely what that document that I put in the chat box is trying to help folks circumnavigate some of these frustrations. So back to the linking the ORCiD ID. So we started off with ERA Commons and making sure that our ORCiD ID is linked to our ERA Commons account. The second step is making sure that it's linked here. And I mentioned some of those error messages where some folks have said, "Oh, I've linked my ORCiD already," but what they've meant is it was in those linked accounts as a logway path in, but it's not linked here. So we want to make sure that it's under here where it says your name and profile or my profile. You just click that edit button and you enter the information, your name, your position, You actually have to select the United States from the drop-down box. You can't put US or USA. Same thing with Rhode Island. You have to pick Rhode Island from the drop-down box. And then ORCiD ID, you click that link, and if here mine's already linked, but it will say create or link to ORCiD. It will then take you back to ORCiD. It will ask you to authorize. So it will take you to your ORCiD login. You log in, and at the bottom it'll say authorize access. And it's hard to see because on that authorized access, it's in a box that's the same color as the background. It's in a white box with green writing. So for folks that might be colorblind, it's a usability issue, but it's sort of down hiding at the bottom. It says authorize access. You click that button, and then what happens is you see this National Center for Biotechnology information here, and it says access granted on this day. And so that's you're sort of completing that handshake, so that shows up there. Um, this is super important because we've had some folks reach out to us in the library and they say, I'm trying to add my ORCiD and it won't save. And when I meet with them, they're already down here in the new doc, they're already starting a biosketch and they're trying to add it directly to the biosketch. But you can add the ORCiD to your biosketch or current and pending support document, common forms, until it's linked up here. So it has to be up here in this My Profile section first. And once it's there, then it can be added directly to those documents. So, talking about those documents, let me actually work in someone else's account instead of my own. That way we can see a better idea of some examples here. So let me just pick a researcher at the hospital. We'll pick one here. And as you can see, here's Professor Ruiz. You get the dashboard, and she has different biosketches that are set up for various things. And you can see here that some of these are in the old format, the NIH biosketch, which is being phased out for the biographical common form. And this is a great scenario because if we're helping faculty create biographical sketch common forms, we can use those old forms as templates and we can pull in information from them, which is really great. So let's just do that as a test. So I'm just going to say test here so I can remove this document after this because I don't want to uh, lock up her dashboard. And then I'm going to say NIH Biographical Sketch Common Form. This is super important because the old form, which says NIH Biosketch, logically, a lot of people keep clicking on this still because they think that this is the one, but this is not the one. This is the old form, and they have to keep this in until that, folks have been able to submit all the submissions that are under that old deadline. But the new one is called the NIH Biographical Sketch Common Form. That's the one we want because I've also met with some folks who have inadvertently selected the NSF one or the DOE one. So we're looking specifically for the NIH Biographical Sketch Common Form, and then you get these options. The first question that we had, which is a great one about outdated information in your ERA Commons information or ORCiD. If those are outdated, you can see here at ERA Commons. If I select ERA Commons, it's going to pull that information from Professor Ruist's her name, ID, demographic, employment, this section under your personal profile. It's going to pull that information. So if that information is out of date here, which we have seen for some folks, it's going to be outdated. Whatever it pulls into the sketch is going to be outdated. So some folks might, if they've already connected their ORCiD, they might, if they have an ORCiD set up where they've actually populated it, that might be an option, so they can choose that. But what I'm curious about is using an existing document because, for the last couple of months, I've been doing workshops where we've worked with the old form just to set it up in SciENcv that we could use it as a template for the new form. And so if you've done that, I can pick one of these and then say, okay, use the information in here and pull this over, and then hit create. It'll take a couple seconds here. And it tells me some errors because it says, oh, in this old form, there were more publications. Now you're only allowed 5 for the proposal and 5 for contributions to science. And so you'll see some error messages pop up. So here there's an error message. And anytime you see an exclamation mark, that means that there are things to fix. And don't panic because at first you see lots of these exclamation marks. And some of these changes are just because in the old form they didn't ask for some things. Like they ask the location now for certain appointments and positions. They ask start and end dates for certain fields, country of origin. So, the good thing is that if you have an existing biosketch in SciENcv, you don't have to toss it. You can import in as much as you can and then try to clean it up. So I'm going to go in here to edit, and you can see right here, they're just asking to add country of origin. And again, we talked about link your ORCiD identifier. I've added her ORCiD here because why was I able to add it as a delegate? The reason is because she has already added it as uh, to her mini profile. If she hadn't added it to her mini profile, then it wouldn't have been an option for me to add it. So, and then I'm going to hit save. And so that's red exclamation mark has disappeared because we've formatted this in the way. For this, the professional preparation now needs to be in reverse chronological order. So in some cases we just have to move dates around. And other things, it's missing information, like it's missing a start date. So now we need to go back and add when is the start for this and when is the country for this. I also don't want to panic people. As delegates, as long as you give us your CV or other document to work from, we can do this for you. We can't certify the document, but in the same way that we could help you prepare a biosketch in the past, we can still do that. So you don't have to necessarily panic that there's no support for updating some of this information. While we're in here, though, I also wanted to highlight products because, in the fillable PDF form, you could have a link to your full My Bibliography. That's gone away. And now you're limited to 5 products, so 5 citations from your My Bibliography or ORCiD that are specific to the proposal, and then 5 that are significant products related to your uh, contributions to science. And where this has caused an issue now is under contributions to science, folks used to have citations there. And now in the new supplement instructions, they say we're not allowed to have citations. What you can do is you're allowed to reference one of those papers above. So if you have papers in those products for contributions to science, you can say Colby et al. 2025, we discovered X, Y, and Z, as long as Colby et al. 2025 is one of the papers that are cited in those products. But you can't have standalone citations within the personal statement or contributions to science anymore, which is, I understand, a significant change. So, in terms of the content, what's allowed, what's not allowed, our compliance and experts in our office's sponsor projects are still the experts and our knowledge base. And so we seek guidance. So if folks, have questions about certain things. All we know is at this point, we're waiting for feedback for what we submitted and waiting for NIH to come back and say, do we need to change something? For example, with one of the like the key and senior personnel, where it says, you can have a minimum of the last 3 years for your professional and academic appointments and positions, but it lets us put in more than that. And so, there doesn't seem to be any consequences for going over 3 years if people add it in. But at the same time, where the instructions are clear, such as not adding additional citations in the contributions to science, and only referencing existing citations, that one, there's some parts that are crystal clear, and then there are some that are so kind of up in the air. We had questions about for professional appointments, like do they belong, like if someone's a part of a public advisory group or a society membership, according to those instructions, they belong now under the appointments and positions under, there's these 3 categories: academic, professional, and institutional. And if you click on each of these, it takes you back to a government page where they define what those are. And so where folks were saying, well, where do I put my society? I'm serving on the board of the society. It would go here under the professional appointment. We've also noticed a bug where if the dates are overlapping in a certain way, it won't let you save that information. So you might have to be certain about when things start and end. because we've encountered some bugs with those overlaps, and we've reported that to the help desk and hope that they sort that out. But it's just something to be aware about. Other bugs that come to mind in the biographical sketch supplement, your personal statement. Here you can see that there are page breaks, and they're saying you're allowed to use um, a markdown, for example, to create page breaks. And then folks go to view draft, and suddenly those page breaks are disappearing, and it's just a block of text. And so we've reached out to the help desk to say, like, on one hand, you're giving us guidance that we can have page breaks, and then yet when I download this, there are no page breaks, and they still haven't sorted that out. But that's a bug that we're hoping gets ironed out. But that's right now, that's one of the situations with the appointments and positions is that the dates overlapping have caused some issues saving. So let's go to the certification area because, as I mentioned, even with the new biographical sketch common form, we can add uh, information into a biosketch on behalf of an investigator for both uh, a common form biographical sketch and also a current and pending and other support document. But what we can't do is we can't download it. So even if you have a staff assistant populate a biosketch for you of the new common form or current and pending and other support document, we can't download it until you come to this section where it says certification and where it says download. You have to download that, and the certification box will come up. And you certify that the information is correct, that you're not part of I think it says something like a malign foreign recruitment program. And then you say, I'm not a part of this program, and you certify, and then suddenly we're allowed to download that PDF. If you've downloaded the PDF and you've certified it, you can't make any changes to that PDF document, that file. You have to come back into SciENcv. You have to make the changes here within the platform, come back to that draft within that you've saved on your dashboard, make the changes here, and then recertify again, and then we can download it to include it with your submission documents. But we've had some questions about that certification process, and right now the only way that we can see to sort of make that certification happen is you have to come in and you actually have to click download. So download the document, and then that certification box will come up. What happens for us if we try to do it? It says this hasn't been certified yet. Do you want to contact the investigator to have them certify it? And so you might notice that you get a ping from an assistant saying, please log into your SciENcv account to certify. So that's a substantial change as well. Okay, so let's go on to the current and pending and other support document. So as I mentioned, in your dashboard, the good thing is once you have set up a NIH biographical sketch common form, you can use that as a template for future ones. So just the same way that I used Professor Ruiz, she had some earlier NIH biosketches for, aimed at different proposals. You can use that in the same way. So, she can use this uh, document here as a template to populate ones in the future. So I'm just going to delete this one from her account because I don't want to clog up her account here. And then I'm going to go to the other support document. Same thing, click on new document. I'm just going to say CPOS and then test here. It won't do underscores, but it will do hyphens, which is a strange, that it's so specific there. And then for the document type, we're looking for the NIH current and pending other support common form. So I know that there's a lot of other agencies that are using this platform right now. And for most of us, we don't already have, like, this is new, the use of this form within SciENcv. It's a new common form. So we're not going to have an existing document for most of us yet, because many of us have not had a deadline yet to have one. So most of us are probably going to start with a blank document, and then we hit create. And then again, the thing we want to check for is in the identifying information, we want to make sure that that ORCiD identifier is there. And so here it's missing. So I'm going to click on that and we can see the red exclamation mark. I'm going to add in information. I would add in this information here. Let's say Providence, US, Rhode Island. I don't happen to have the information about Professor Ruiz's start date, but I'm just going to put one in here because we're just using this as an example, and then say link your ORCiD identifier. I'm going to move this box here. And again, you notice that I got an error message that says this is going to be completed, and I did it again, and I did it. This has been the story for SciENcv. It's like I just have to keep trying. Clear cookies, clear cache, go to a different browser. Here again, I'm trying to save this, and it says, oh, I'm saving that document. And it took twice. I had to click on it twice. So now you can see her ORCiD ID is here. So that's a requirement that be present on the document. And then, then you can come in here and you can add your information. A lot of us probably are going to NIH Reporter to find this information. What's the title of the project, if it's current or pending support, what's the award number, which agency has funded the grant, the location that's located on NIH Reporter, and then for each year, how many persons month were dedicated. So if it's part-time, 6 months, or if it's full-time, 12 months. The overall objectives, which again are present on NIH Reporter. And if there's overlap, if there's none, you can just put none. And then there's an in-kind contributions and again, certification process where people have to do this before they can be downloaded by staff persons. It has to be downloaded there. So I promised that I would stop a quarter till to give folks some opportunities to ask some questions. If folks are encountering some of the issues that are in this document here that I have in our repository that I shared the link and want to meet one-on-one, I've really enjoyed meeting with you on Zoom, and then you can share your screen, and then we can actually go through, we look at your area comments, we look at your My Bibliography, we look at your SciENcv, depending on the time you have, and then try to link your ORCiD ID to your SciENcv and troubleshoot any of the issues that we might have with like adding publications or whatnot. I know that, the substantial changes include if you want to add a publication to a biographical sketch common form, it has to be on My Bibliography or it has to be an ORCiD. So in some cases, we're meeting to make sure that we're adding those papers to one of those two spaces so that they're accessible. When you're in an NIH biosketch where you click on, uh, let me just do that as an example here. Let me pick Professor Stroud here. So this is a bug. You can see this here where it says Professor Stroud documents and it says they have not created a CV yet. They very much have created one. And this is just a document. This is just an error where if I click into, if I open up a different browser and I log in here, suddenly we'll see that she has documents. But yet on this browser, it's saying there's no documents here. And this was a bug that popped up when I was doing a live demo for family medicine. And it was the same thing where we had this issue where, folks are saying, oh, I'm logging in and I'm not seeing, they're saying I have no CVs. And they're like, what does this mean? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not seeing that error. And then, of course, it ended up being just a bug, where we have to refresh here. So here I'm in a different browser. So I will take my own medicine here. And I will go to Professor Stroud's account, and suddenly we'll see documents there where in this browser it says there are no documents. We pick her documents here, Stroud. Oh, here she is. Okay. So this is Professor Stroud's. Now I'm on Safari, and now you can see under here it says Lara Stroud's documents, and all of her documents are here in the dashboard. Here I am in Chrome. It says you have not created a CV yet. It's a bug, so all we can do is clear cookies, clear our cache, refresh, log out, log back in. So, anyways, I was talking about the publications and ways that we can support you adding publications. So, as I mentioned, one of the issues we've had is that folks, in the past, in the fillable forms, we could, uh, you know, easily add citations, and now you have to come down here where it says select products. And this is again a bug, so we will just keep trying the joys of live demos. But what should happen when you log into products is you should see the papers that you have within My Bibliography or ORCiD. There's a tab for My Bibliography, there's a tab for ORCiD. Let me just refresh this. Okay, here it goes. All we can do is keep refreshing. And so we go down here to My Bibliography, for example, and that will load. And then you select the papers that you want. Same thing, you hit continue, you go down to other significant products, you click the ones that you want. And if they're not there, that means we have to go back into My Bibliography and we have to go into ORCiD and we have to add them. Either the investigator or us as delegates, we add them so that they're visible here. And you'll notice here where it says manage my bibliography or in ORCiD, it says refresh from ORCiD. So we might have to go back and add that. But again, this is just the site being difficult. But okay, so let's pause here.
So we do have a number of questions for you, Andrew,
Mhm.
as I'm sure you're expecting.
Right.
Some that are coming up are for the NCBI account. One person has it linked to their Gmail, another said it was created at a prior institution, and they have their current email listed in the profile, but will their account always be the email they signed up with?
That's a good question. So it doesn't have to be. So we have to have the help desk help with that issue. This has actually become sort of a funny issue because I was working with a faculty member who had a Hotmail account. If folks remember Hotmail, and that was still, and she was saying, "Oh wow, I had this email address when I was a trainee, and it was still showing up." And when this faculty had added me as a delegate, I didn't recognize who it was because what I see as the delegate is whatever that name is that's been assigned. And so there's also a faculty member who has a character from The Simpsons who might be on this call. You can out yourself if you want to, but so like folks might have one time they might have set these up and added things on there that they necessarily want to change. But what I wanted to show is when you go down to account settings, um, you can see where it says this is your email and it has like a username below it, your NCBI account username. And so that name is what I see when you add me as a delegate. And so if you have a Simpsons character or your Hotmail from many years ago, that's what I'm going to see. And so what we've had to do is like in the Hotmail example is go back to the My NCBI help desk and say, we'd like to replace the username and the NCBI account with this email address. I actually, that doesn't cause any problems having a Simpsons character, for example, but as long as your delegate knows who they're getting an invitation from, because otherwise all I see is what's in this box. And so sometimes someone's added me as a delegate and I haven't recognized that it's who that is because I don't recognize what that username is. So yes, that can be changed. Unfortunately, the help desk has to do that change, but it can be made. And I will also preface right now the help desk, as you've seen how buggy this platform is and how many issues they're having, that the help desk might not get back to you right away.
And is there any drawback to linking every login option? So ERA Commons, ORCiD, Brown, for example, or is that fine?
No, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, ideally, what we'd like for a faculty is your ERA linked My Bibliography and your ORCiD ID linked SciENcv to be in the same platform. Like, that's great. I really appreciate that. And I know that That's not ideal for everyone. We have some folks at the VA hospital and they want some things a little separate, like totally fine. I'm just thinking from the delegate perspective, it's easier for us to be delegate on one account because sometimes we forget that you have more than one account. But right now, I think if folks don't have one of those special cases, it'd be great just to have all of your login IDs on one. And if you discover that for some reason, as a trainee or you're in another institution and you have more than one MyNCBI account, again, we can contact the help desk and have them merge. As long as you tell them, which one you want to merge and because obviously we want your most up-to-date My Bibliography coexisting with your SciENcv that you're using, because that's where you're going to be pulling your papers from, or ORCiD. But most of us are probably going to be using My Bibliography because that's more likely to be up to date, even though we are hoping that folks take us up on the offer to uh, add us as a delegate to then add us to your ORCiD account if you want to add papers to your ORCiD account so that they're both accessible. Great question. Thank you.
And then we have another one that says, I understand that now we're not supposed to include any citations in the contribution to science section. Does that mean not even including a parenthetical reference? But can we describe research that isn't cited in the section?
So that's
In the
the
product section,
tricky
sorry.
thing. So you can reference, but and actually let me bring that paper up because these I have some instructions that are useful for these kind of questions. I'm just going to put them in the chat box here. Those links. So there's two links for the biographical common sketch form because the supplement is treated as a separate document, even though within SciENcv it's a part of the interface for the NIH biographical sketch common form. So that's why there's two links for the common form. So don't panic. The second link, the supplement, has information about the personal statement and the contributions to science. So you can't add new citations, but you can reference. And so if I go into the documents for the supplement and I come down to where it says contributions to science here, it says you may reference. I'm going to highlight this section so that it's and actually make it larger so that people can see it. So you may reference. So if you have a parenthetical reference, Colby et al. 2025, to something that you've cited in that section for other significant ones, then that seems to be fine. It doesn't say that you can't reference a paper that's not in there, but they might not know what paper you're referencing. So I think in this case, it's what we do know is that we can't add citations in this section. We can't add citations to the personal statement section, but we can reference. You can reference within those.
And can you reference things such as like a grant number, for example, that isn't a publication citation, or is that also not allowed?
So I haven't seen any. So as long as so that's another question. So folks, for so many years, we've been told no hyperlinks, no hyperlinks, no hyperlinks, and now we have biographical sketches that have ORCiD that's hyperlinked, and those papers, if they're imported from PubMed, will have hyperlinks. And the Opera at NIH, they say that that's totally fine, that that's generated by the system, and those hyperlinks are okay. So I would say as long as those grants don't have hyperlinks, there's nothing in here that says you can't do that. The only thing in here that it says, but it says no citations, no citations in the supplement. References, okay, no citations.
And then there was a few questions about delegates. Can you add it to NCBI? Does it have to be through ORCiD? Is there a better spot to put it in
Yes.
SciENcv?
So ideally, we would like as staff, we would like access to both your MyNCBI account and your ORCiD. The reason is because obviously we want to help troubleshoot. We want to be able to help populate some of these forms. And the only way to do that is if you click on your name in MyNCBI and you go down to account settings and you scroll down to delegates and add delegate and put in our email address. That's the only way we're going to be able to see your account. And the same thing with ORCiD. ORCiD is a separate system. And so for us to be able to see your account, for example, here, if I go to Professor Fairbrother, I can't see his account. I can't edit it unless he's made me a delegate. I can't add papers to that account. Some folks are not so, in the NIH world, maybe My Bibliography is more of a workhorse, so most folks are concentrating there to make sure that that's up to date. But we also have, ORCiD has a lot of great ways for adding papers. So for example, if I go into uh, my ORCiD record, and I edit this here, let me just go here to edit this, and I go down to works. There's a lot of great tools that integrate. I can just click add, I say search and link, and if you have a lot of papers like Web of Science or Scopus, I was just helping Professor Colby update her My Bibliography. She's has over 250 publications, and so all I had to do was just go into Scopus or Web of Science, and if your Scopus ID is up to date and your Web of Science researcher ID is up to date, those algorithms do a great job of saying this paper was authored by this person, and I can go in and I can import them directly from ORCiD into your paper. So if you haven't touched your ORCiD record, you just have the ID number and you haven't added any other information, I'm happy to meet with you, or if you make me a delegate to help add those papers so that those appear. Some of the great features I think of ORCiD too are there's some things that are really easy to add. So for example, if you want to add like a data set, a patent, um, I can come, I'm sorry, let me move this. I'm moving my Zoom box here. I can come down here to work type, and you can see data, software, legal, there's trademarks, patents, websites, digital health devices, whatever have you. If you want to add something that's not a publication, like there's a lot of ways to add that to ORCiD. So there might be a lot of benefits for folks to use ORCiD over My Bibliography for certain things that they want to add to certain things. So yes, so to answer the question, we'd like to be a delegate on both of these. And for delegates, we need to make sure that we have our own accounts so that we can be added as delegates. Okay. Any other
Um,
questions?
So there's actually still a good amount of questions. I know we are coming up on time.
Mhm.
Andrew, if you have time, perhaps you and I can still go through the rest of the questions, so they'll be on the recorded portion of the webinar. If
Yeah,
not, we
definitely.
can. Okay.
I'm happy
So,
for folks. I know that folks have to log off because your lunch hour is ending, and you can email me directly and we can meet one-on-one to troubleshoot. But otherwise, if folks want to stay on the call.
great. And all of this will be on the recording as well, which will be available within the week. So another question that came up a few times was if folks haven't started their SciENcv biosketch or they don't have a version of that, the best way to kind of upload or import information from their old versions.
So if they have not already created a biosketch on SciENcv prior to now, then they're going to have to do it like, pasting in or start from scratch. So basically, coming here to SciENcv, going to create a new document, and then if you notice it says use an existing document in SciENcv, if they have a PDF or Word doc, they're not going to be able to use this second radial dial, use an existing document because it's not in SciENcv. So when I did the example from Professor Ruist, I was able to use her old biosketch as an example because she happened to voluntarily use SciENcv in the past to create biosketches. So she was sort of a digital copy within SciENcv. But if you have a PDF or a Word document and you have no existing document in SciENcv, you have to click start with a blank document and then just transfer information over, which I understand is, time consuming, but I've been on a lot of Zooms over the last 3 weeks with faculty where we've done just that, where we've just met and filled out the biosketch together and gone through and the good thing is once you have that, you can use it as a template for future proposals. You can keep using that as a seed that you can then customize for whatever proposal you have coming up. So great question.
And then for early investigators, for the 5 contributions to science, are they better off choosing high impact journals or lower impact where they might be the first author?
So I'm not necessarily the best expert for which might be the most competitive for the, their grants and finance experts are probably, I don't want to like steal, I can help with like the technical problems and some of these other issues around publications, but our grants and finance staff are definitely our key, and our OSP colleagues, our Office of Research Strategy, Adele Minogue and colleagues are probably the best experts for this. What I can say is contributions to science, you can have up to 5 sections. And so hopefully you can include all 5, like all of those papers, if you have them. I will say for trainees and people getting started, when you're in my NCBI, like for T32 grants, for example, we know that they're going to publish papers. We know that you're the PI on the grant. You're not an author on their paper, but their paper is going to show up on your My Bibliography because it needs to be tied to the grant, so that's reported in the RPPR. So what I've been trying to do with trainees is before they need a SciENcv set up to activate their My Bibliography, even if they have no publications yet, so that when they do have publications, it's already connected to their SciENcv. So, when they come to their MyNCBI account, they want to make sure that they activate their My Bibliography, even if they have nothing in it. And then they can create if they need a biosketch or current opinion, a support document in the future, that it will be tied to their My Bibliography.
And then is there a way to include conference presentations and posters in the biosketch as you could in the old version?
Yes. So, I mean, as long as it's allowable within those instructions, you can come to your My Bibliography and you can add a citation, and that's not a paper that's indexed in PubMed. And I know that this is spinning, so maybe I'll go back to my version here on Safari, and we can demo how to do that. I know that you can also add preprints now, for example. So if folks have something in bioRxiv or medRxiv, that those are allowable now. So this is taking a long time. I'm sorry. Buggy platforms. But I'll kind of explain it why it's loading. What happens is you log into my bibliography, you click on Add Citations, you click on Manual, a box will pop up at the top, a drop-down box that says papers that are not indexed in PubMed. So a lot of our APA journals, for our psychology and psychiatry faculty, they have such a body of journals that not all of them are indexed in PubMed or PubMed Central. In the same way you've had to manually add those citations for those non-indexed journals, there's a drop down where you can say like data set, for example, or database, in the same way that we showed in, oh, here it is. So add citations manually. It says journal article that does not appear in PubMed. Click on that, and then you can see meeting abstracts. So if you have a presentation, patent data set. So in the same way I was showing you how you do that on ORCiD, you can do that in My Bibliography. And if it's in your My Bibliography and it's in your ORCiD, you have the potential to grab it and add it to something. You just want to make sure you check with the instructions to make sure that it's an allowable item, but as long as it's allowable, then you can grab it.
And then we had a few questions that I think are still better for DOR, as you mentioned, about in reviewing grants, what kind of publications to put in. So I would encourage people to reach out to their grants admin for information on that. But for citing publications, since you can't cite the products closely related to the current proposal in the contributions to science section, if someone wants to reference those manuscript products in that section, should they also list them in their other section so that it can be linked? Is that what you had described earlier?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been kind of existing in this area where it doesn't explicitly prohibit something. So it says you can reference the papers within the 5 papers within contributed, but it doesn't say you can't reference ones and the other ones. So for example, in your personal statement, to me, as long as there's 10 papers in those products, and if you have as long as it says you can reference and it's not a citation, it seems, at this point, unless we receive guidance otherwise, I've seen people do it. I'll just say that.
And do you recommend putting publications in My Bibliography or ORCiD or both? Um,
So I am biased as a medical librarian that, PubMed's imported, when you import an article directly from, uh, so let me just cancel this and say, I'm going to add citation. I'm going to say from PubMed. I'm going to search a paper here. Um, and let's say my paper comes up and then I can add it directly to I'm going to click this link. Of course, is this my bibliography that I'm in? I don't want to do it in someone else's. Yeah, okay. I'm going to add this to my bibliography. I trust PubMed to have the correct citation information because it's not manually entered. It's going to be added to my bibliography as what we call it like a controlled field. So you'll notice on your product section, if you have a paper from PubMed that's imported that's manually added, it might be missing the PMID, it might be missing the PMC ID, it might not have a linked to the article itself. So to me, I think that the metadata is very trustworthy if you're importing it directly from PubMed. Now, that being said, as I mentioned with ORCiD, you can import from Web of Science, you can import from Scopus, and that's fine too. But it's just personal preference, I guess, at this point, that I feel like the citations I see imported from PubMed are, they're already formatted in a way that NIH, it's an NIH platform imported into another NIH platform. There was some confusion, of course, because they had hyperlinks, but at least they did weigh in and say that those hyperlinks are okay for publications in your product section when they're imported from these spaces. So great question.
and then it looks like for if you're working on RPPR right now, the formatting of the personnel page has changed to reflect the new rules. And someone had also mentioned that uploading the draft document in ERA Commons example for RPPR, it wouldn't accept it, only the final version. So just making note of that. Um, there were some questions about for current and pending support section. Are you able to indicate PI, co-PI, or investigator? And when adding references, similarly, the system pulled in co-PI work where someone wasn't really contributing. How can you avoid that problem?
So I think, let me go back to my dashboard here to look at an example. Let's see if the other browser is working a little faster. A lot of that information now has to be manually entered into a current and pending support common form. So for example, if I click on, who did I have up here earlier? I think it was Professor Stroud or mm, as an example. And I come down to current and pending support document. A lot of that data is probably coming from NIH Reporter. So for example, if I come down to proposals and active projects and I click on here, this is for the investigator, this is for the PI, and because this is their current and pending support document, and so the award number here is going to be whatever is linked to the PI of that particular award. So, um, and then that information is the is for that investigator what their person month or partial person month is for that project. So I'm not exactly sure where auto if it's probably being pulled in, it's probably being pulled in because of their award number. I'm assuming is like that's what's being because it has to be tying to something, like the only thing I could see that it would import that information is if there's like a project number, those last digits on the grant number. But definitely I would check with OSP on this one.
And then just a few more questions, and then I think we've covered most of the items in the chat. For login.gov, two questions about that. One, is the Duo app the only option for two-factor authentication? And do you need the real ID to access that in the science
So
CC?
login.gov, what a great tool that is because you can use it for ERA Commons, you can use it for SciENcv, you can use it for other federal systems. So I think it's a great tool. You can have Duo, but you can also have it come to your phone. You can have it like there are other authentication methods. So it's a um, I would say that most of the faculty I've been working with aren't using Duo for that. I think they're using like they're getting a code or something that comes to their cell phones.
Is there a way to delete yourself as a delegate?
So we can't delete ourselves, but faculty can go into their account settings and they're going to find us listed below. So for example, I have my colleague Kelsey added as an example. So they come here and where it says this little trash can, remove, you click on that and it will remove the individual. So I was just meeting with the faculty yesterday where there was an opposite where someone had added him as a delegate. So maybe he was a PI in a grant and for whatever reason, maybe he wanted access, but he couldn't delete it. Like he needs the person who added them as a delegate to go into their account and then remove them. So as delegates, we can be added, but they have to, like in the same way they have to add us as delegates, they have to come in and otherwise we have to contact the help desk and say, could you please, because we have had some folks, they retire or move on to other institutions or, turn over in other ways and, they're sort of outdated list of names. And you can also, in the meantime, you can actually remove access to My Bibliography and SciENcv in case it makes you uncomfortable to have somebody added on there to have access to your documents that you may not necessarily, they may not need those anymore.
Great. And then I think kind of the last question, I'm sure others will have questions, or if we miss something, again, please reach out to us. And this is being recorded and shared. But if something's not in PubMed at all, it won't have a PMID. Is that accurate? And how to kind of work around that?
Yeah, so that's either we have to manually add it, which is fine, when we were doing those steps within my bibliography. I think I had that up on one of these screens. It might have been this one. Um, or you can add it to ORCiD, and then you make sure that the citation information. So if you import it in ORCiD, through Web of Science or Scopus, it's going to have probably the most up-to-date citation. It's going to have a DOI. It's going to have most of all the other information. So as long as it's imported from those, it meets, their format standards.
Great. I think that we have hit most of the questions. So Andrew, thank you so much for your time and being open to sharing what you know with our group. Again, this is recorded. We'll send out the link to the recording once it's live. And Andrew, if someone does want to contact you, is email the best route to do so?
Yep. Andrew_Creamer@brown.edu is,
Great.
just reach out anytime and we'll meet, we'll share a screen and we'll try to troubleshoot what we can.
Great. Thank you everyone for attending.